let's talk about something you've probably noticed. We're living in a world where everyone seems to know their rights, right? But what about responsibility? It feels like there's this growing imbalance, and today we're going to dig into why that's happening and, more importantly, what we can do about it. So what happens when an entire generation gets really, really good at talking about their rights? Freedom of speech, personal choice, privacy, but kind of struggles with the other side of that coin. Words like duty, consequences, accountability. That's the paradox we're up against. A society just can't run on rights alone. It needs citizens who get that it's a two-way street. And this is often ground zero for the whole issue. Let's picture a student. We can call him Kabir. He's super smart, totally plugged into global issues, but when his teacher calls him out for not pulling his weight on a group project, what's his first line of defense? I know my rights. It's like a shield that just shuts down the conversation. And it points to a much deeper problem, this belief that rights just exist with no strings attached. Okay, so let's be clear here. This isn't just about one kid's attitude. It's a much bigger modern dilemma. It's actually rooted in a huge shift in how we teach and even think about what it means to be a citizen. This is a challenge for our entire educational system.
Think about it. It wasn't that long ago that citizenship was something you did. You learned it by actually helping a neighbor or showing up for a town event, seeing firsthand how your actions affected your community. Now, for a lot of kids, it's just a chapter in a textbook. It's all theoretical. And that creates this massive gap between knowing the right thing and actually doing the right thing.
To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to look at two different educational philosophies. Think of them as two different blueprints for building a citizen. Both of them have really good intentions, but as we'll see, each one has its own built-in risks that are feeding into this imbalance. And this slide, wow, this really lays it all out. On one hand, you've got a rule-based system, like CBSE, that's all about creating compliance and order. And hey, it's great for teaching discipline. On the other hand, you have a rights-focused system, like IB, that's amazing at fostering global awareness and activism. But here's the catch. Look at the risks. They are literally the two halves of the exact problem we're talking about today. Let's zero in on that rule-based risk. A system like this can produce kids who follow the rules to the letter, but maybe only when somebody's watching. It teaches obedience, for sure. But does it actually build an internal ethical compass? Does it make them feel a sense of personal ownership over their choices? That's the big question. And then there's the flip side, the rights-focused risk. This approach is fantastic at creating students who are passionate about huge global issues. But the real danger is that all that awareness doesn't always translate into personal accountability. It can create this idea that having a strong opinion or, posting about something online is the same as taking responsible action in your own life. So if our schools have these potential blind spots, where does the real work get done? Well, it all comes back home. No matter what school a child goes to, parents have the most important job of all, bridging that gap between knowing your rights and understanding your responsibilities. And this right here is a fantastic practical game plan. First, always explain the why behind a rule, not just be home by 10, but be home by 10 because I worry and I need to know you're safe. Second, connect every single right to a duty. You absolutely have the right to your opinion. And you have the duty to listen when others share theirs. Third, and this is huge, you've got to model it yourself. And finally, encourage them to ask questions. A strong ethical foundation isn't afraid of a little scrutiny. So, what's the end game in all of this? What are we trying to build? The ultimate goal is to create a framework for being a truly ethical citizen, a set of principles that goes way beyond any single school curriculum. We want to raise someone who deeply understands that rights and duties are two sides of the very same coin. These points here are really the core of it all. But if you take away just one thing from this slide, let it be this one. Action matters more than opinion. Citizenship isn't just a belief system you hold in your head. It's something you do every single day. All right, let's start to pull all these threads together. We've looked at the problem, we've looked at the different educational blueprints, and we've talked about solutions at home. The final piece of the puzzle is understanding what this all means for society as a whole. We live in an age where everyone has a megaphone. The volume of our collective conversation just keeps getting turned up and up. But is more noise, more shouting, really what we need right now? And that's the bottom line. What the world is desperately crying out for aren't people who can just shout the loudest. It needs responsible people, people who don't just speak up, but also follow through. People who truly get that their own freedom is completely tied to the well-being of everyone around them. So the path forward is actually pretty clear. For every student, no matter where they go to school, the journey is about finding that balance. For some, it's about moving from just obeying to truly owning their choices. For others, it's about shifting from awareness to real accountability. And for others still, it's about taking those good local instincts and scaling them up into a confident civic voice. And so that leaves us with this one last really big question to think about. It's actually pretty easy to raise an informed kid, someone who can ace a test or win a debate. But it's a much harder and frankly a much more important challenge to raise an ethical citizen, someone who acts with integrity, who takes responsibility, and who feels a real connection to others. That's the real work, and it's on all of us.